Welcome back to another episode of Inner Monologues. Suppose you're in a group project. It's a group of 5 students. Everybody gets the same mark. Do you work really hard and carry the team, or do you contribute less and let others do the work? That is the question I have for you right now. If everybody thinks that way, the project falls apart. If nobody thinks that way, everybody benefits. So what's the rational choice? That simple classroom dilemma lies at the heart of game theory. So, group projects have proved that game theory isn't a theory, it's a survival skill. Okay. Before I go further, what is game theory? That's why you're listening to this podcast, isn't it? It's basically a mathematical study, or basically strategic decision making, where the optimal choice or the best choice for one participant or one person depends on the choices of others. So it's like a framework that you use for analyzing interactions in economics, politics, biology, or just basic societal interactions. It's like there's a lot of things that are involved in this, okay? It's like we can break down everyday interactions into structural components. There are different terms used in game theory like players, strategies, payoffs, rationality, zero-sum games, non-zero-sum games, cooperative versus non-cooperative. The famous one that I have read about is the Nash equilibrium, or also known as there's another thing called as I gave you a question, right, about the group project. It's like a dilemma that you're in. So a very famous dilemma example is the prisoner's dilemma. It's a pretty famous one. So it's like, imagine you and your partner in crime have been arrested. Police have separated both of you into different cells. You can't communicate with each other, and then the detective or the police officer walks into the room and gives you an offer. I'll make you an undeniable offer, some deal type they're giving. So the person is like, betray your partner, you can provide proof against them, and you can be free while they will go to jail for 10 years. But if your partner betrays first, you will be in jail for 10 years and they can go away. And then that person will sit quietly, the police officer is sitting quietly, and you have to think. Or, if both of you remain silent, both of you will be held in jail for 1 year. Small cases will be put against both of you. You're sitting there and you're thinking what you want to do. If both of you stay silent, 1 year each. Best collective outcome. But if you betray and they stay silent, you are free. And they get 10 years. But if they betray and you stay silent, they are free and you get 10 years of jail. But if both of you betray, 5 years each of jail sentence. See, now the logical move for the group, or what decision you can take is silence. 1 year is nothing. Walk out, move on with life. But from individual perspective, betrayal seems safer. Because if your partner is thinking in the cell right now, like thinking the same exact thing, what if they already made a deal? Because if they betray you and you stayed silent, gone. Your 10 years of your life is gone. But if you betray them first, worst case, you both get 5 years. Best case, you walk free. Win-win it looks like, right? Worst outcome then if you would trust each other and stayed silent. This is called the prisoner's dilemma. And that welcomes you to game theory. So what I'm going to talk about in this podcast, I've read on Google, different articles, Substack articles, or different articles I've read across the internet. This is basically a more deep dive version of one of my previous episodes about decision making. It's a very important thing, game theory. It's like a scientific study of strategic decision making. Analyzes every situation where your outcome depends not just on what you do, but what others also do. That's basically, everyday human interaction. Let's say you want to make a decision about which path you want to take while walking on the road, or which bike goes which side, your relationship, or anything. If you're applying a job, you want to apply for a course, you're competing against the other candidates. Your strategy affects your chances and their strategy affects yours. What if you're posting on social media? That is also game theory. You're competing for attention in a finite attention span economy. Your content strategy affects everybody else's reach. all of human interaction depends on strategic decision making. The ones who have mastered it become great leaders, charisma, and all of that. And unfortunately, most people are terrible at it because they don't understand the structure of the games they are playing. They optimize for the wrong things, cooperate when they should defect, and defect when they should cooperate, stay in bad company until they see better outcomes. Game theory makes the invisible visible. Okay. I told a lot of technical terms before. Let me talk about those. The famous one, apart from the prisoner's dilemma, is something called the Nash equilibrium. Or you can say in simple terms, why everyone stays stuck. So John Nash was a famous guy. Google him. He figured out something that changed how we understand strategic behavior. It's like, how do I say? You and your friend. So basically, you and your friend, both of you have different ideas. Like one of you wants to go to the beach. One person wants to go to you have a vacation coming up. One person wants to go to the beach. One person wants to go to the mountains. Okay, so you guys are deciding where you want to go. Let's say I really want to go to the mountains, and my best friend, she wants to go to the beach. But I don't want her to. I don't want to force her to come to the mountains with me because her mind won't enjoy it truly, and I don't want to go to the beach also because I won't be able to enjoy it thoroughly, isn't it? So neither of us do anything. We just stay wherever we are. We don't go on a vacation. We are not living whatever we want. So we are both stuck, both worse off than if anyone had just made a move. So that is basically Nash equilibrium. You're both making the best choice given what the other is doing. Like, I don't want to hurt her, she doesn't want to hurt me. Or, make us do something, force each other. But you're locked in a shitty outcome because changing would require coordination that we can't achieve. And that pattern is seen everywhere. Like, you can take companies, they're stuck in pricing wars. Like, both would profit more if they raise their prices together. But neither wants to be the first one because the other could undercut them. So they stay in low profit equilibrium. Friends stuck in shallow relationships. Everybody wants deeper connection, but nobody wants to be vulnerable first. So you all stay surface level, stable but unsatisfying. No one wants to share the uncomfortable story or ask the deep question and all of that. What is the key? The key to escaping this Nash equilibrium is communication and commitment. You need to coordinate strategy changes simultaneously. But most people never even recognize that they're stuck in this equilibrium. They just think that this is just how things are. It's not. It's a strategic trap. You could escape if you understand the game structure. I came across a quote related to this in a Substack article where the quote is by Eugene Odom. Cooperation for mutual benefit, a survival strategy, very common in nature, is one that humanity needs to emulate. Another term that we can speak about right now is the ultimatum game, or why deals fall apart in life. How do I explain it in the most simple way? Humans aren't purely rational, okay? Fairness matters, pride matters, being taken advantage or being used feels worse than losing an opportunity. That's why deals and all fall apart. Why negotiations or partnerships, simple agreements turn to shit. Someone makes an offer that feels unfair, so the other person rejects it out of principle. But at the end, both end up with nothing instead of something. It happens in business constantly. The ones that you've seen, Suits, the web series, you guys would understand pretty much the thing about that. So many days when I've seen that, I feel like the other party gets nothing out. But if they both had cooperated in first itself, they both can walk with pride and all of that. It happens in relationships as well. One person wants something they think is reasonable, other person sees it unfair. Both dig in and then the relationship ends. Workplace negotiations, like employee asks for a raise that they think they deserve. boss offers less than what is fair, company loses the good employee and employee loses the job. The ultimatum game shows how fast, excellent opportunities vanish when fairness and pride collide. Sometimes projecting the principle is worth more than the payoff. See, the key is recognizing which game you're really playing before the clock runs out. You've heard the famous thing, no? Like winning the battle, winning the war, like, not that, sorry. Picking your battles. Like, what do you want to win? What are you trying to get? You need to understand, like, are you playing for optimal outcome or are you playing to punish unfairness? Do you want both positive? Like, you want everything correct to happen? Do you want only you to win or you want the other person also to win? Or you just want peace? That comes with the next concept of zero sum versus positive sum. Basically, why people compete when they should cooperate. Zero sum game means your gain is my loss. It happens in games like sports, poker, promotions, or things like that. And what is positive sum game? That is both of us can win. Zero sum game is your gain, my loss. Positive sum game is we both can win. So, a lot of examples are there. There are two students in a class. Same, like really good students. Academically, I'm talking about. Really good students. If both of them... okay, bad example. There's a lot of students in the class. Let's say there's like 4-5 people who are really good and the rest all are not that great in the class. So if the teacher wants to teach something extra, advanced, it will help or benefit the students. But if the average students are like, stopping them, but the good students want to learn about it, forget about the advanced topic part. Let's say it's an important topic. The teacher is hesitating to teach the normal students or the average students, and the really smart students are really eager to learn. So what can be done over here is either the smart students can coach the average students and get them to their level, and so that everybody can learn together, or the smart students can stay quiet and lose out on learning a very crucial topic, or they can just approach the teacher separately and learn it. These are the different outcomes. See, why all of this happens is that one particular party is worried that they look better than the other party. So they withhold the information, they protect their knowledge, or even sabotage them. That is basically why all of this happens. See, that's the main important crux of what I just told. Like, of all the different terms. I think the question even comes when you look at history. Why there were some Indians who were willing to betray their own country, during the British rule. Maybe they saw some kind of benefit from the British, which they wanted to be the only ones who get. So they sabotaged the chances of the other Indians and benefited at the cost of others. I repeat, at the cost of others. That is basically zero-sum game. That is, other person's loss is their gain. But instead, if they had cooperated with other Indians and found ways to overthrow the British faster, it would have helped the entire country. That is the positive sum. Does it make sense what I'm trying to say? It's like there's always a race between people. The shift will happen when you start questioning, is this a competition, or if both the parties can win. Both the parties must question this. Most games in life, like situations basically, have cooperative potential than people recognize. But competitive instinct kicks in automatically. Understanding whether you are in zero sum or positive sum changes everything about strategy. Next is the concept of repeated games, or why reputation matters. You may not be interested in strategy, but strategy is going to be interested in you. It was a quote by Leon Trotsky. pardon me if I'm, pronouncing it wrong. See, what is this thing about reputation? If somebody plays this game again and again and again, they build trust, they optimize long term outcomes. So, reputation kind of builds for them. Life isn't one shot. You're playing repeated games constantly with, co workers, your friends, patients, partners, people in general. So, if you make someone bad or do something bad for somebody just for some short term gain and people get to know about it, nobody's going to trust you. You just spoiled all your chances in life for getting another future cooperation. If you'll the person, you can get something from them and you're actually good. Slowly when things actually matter, you can get good stuff from them. That's why tit for tat is not, it's like a 50-50 chance. It's sometimes good, sometimes bad. Cooperate on first interaction and then mirror whatever they did. If they cooperated, you cooperate. If they defected, you defect next round. Simple strategy. It helps you win more games. Like, when I mean game, I'm talking about life. So build your reputation. People learn that they can't exploit you, but they also learn that you're willing to cooperate with cooperators. That's why freelance people or new businesses obsess over reviews. That's why feedback really is important. And talking about all that, cooperation comes to the next topic about coordination games. What's coordination games? It's like, you can tell it another way, why everyone does the same stupid thing. Coordination game means everyone benefits if we all do the same thing. It doesn't matter which thing, just that we coordinate. Like which particular app we want to use, or which particular font we want to use, or which particular dress, or which particular color that everybody wants to use, and all of that. See, nobody wants to be the first one to change anything. Being miscoordinated is worse than being coordinated on a bad system. Like, this QWERTY keyboard layout, the QWERTY is the first thing written in the keyboard. It's terribly inefficient, but it's what is used in every model of laptop, any brand. It's suboptimal standard. Why nobody is changing it? Why nobody is putting ABCD first? First of all, one brand switching it individually, it will make it worse, because person getting used to that will not be able to do it on another computer. So other people will become incompatible with the outside world. So they'll not be able to optimize their work if they don't carry their own personal laptop everywhere. And nobody wants to be uncoordinated. It's not stupidity. It's like, it's a lot of effort required. Going out of the way or being a maverick requires simultaneous coordinated movement, so everybody has to switch together. It's very hard to stand out and orchestrate or be in coordination. It's not that individual choices are wrong. It's the equilibrium that everybody is logged into. You should understand when to choose to be outside and when to choose to be in coordination. Next thing is about something called signaling games, or why everybody wastes money or like bullshit. See, you can't directly prove something about yourself, so you do something costly that only someone with that quality could afford to do. It's like employers use degrees as filtering out candidates because it's a costly signal. It's something that's harder to fake. Luxury goods. Rolex doesn't tell time better than your Casio. But why people like it? It's not for functionality, it's for buying that signal. It's saying, I can afford to waste this much money. Signal of wealth is also hard to fake for a long term. Working insane hours, studying for like crazy amount of hours, it's about your personal ethics. It signals your ambition. It's costly signals. Not everybody can mimic it. But it's not saying that they're more valuable, but because everybody is logged in and signaling competition. It's like You can't opt out individually. Refusing to signal makes you invisible, uncompetitive. It's a classic coordination problem. Everybody would be better off we all stopped wasteful signaling. What is wasteful signaling? What is signaling? It's basically telling the small things like, okay, I'm better than this person, I'm better than them. Okay, if I'm going to eat only healthy food, I'm better than the person eating junk food. If I'm going to eat junk food, I'm better than the person who's dieting all the time. At least I'm having something. Low calories, high calories, carbs, keto diet, all of that is signaling. Or saying I'm going to wear Gucci, that's a signaling. I'm going to wear normal Zara's not normal, but I'm wearing Zara. It's a fashion statement. Signaling everywhere. You cannot escape it. But at least now you know what game you're playing. And there's another topic about the tragedy of commons. Why everything or everyone ruins everyone or everything. Basically, too many cooks spoil the dish. Everyone benefits from using a shared resource, but overuse destroys it. Individually rational to use as much as possible, but collectively rational to limit use about it. Perfect example is public toilets. Public toilets are it benefits everybody, but individually nobody wants to take care of it. So everybody leaves a mess, so it becomes a disaster. So everybody uses it for benefit, and after that leaves it like that. So it is everybody ruins everything. What else is there? What example can I give it? Social media. Everybody benefits from quality content. Individually easier to consume and do some shit posting. So the platform will start filling up with garbage and everybody's ideas and opinions. So it will eventually degrade individual experience. Environment. Everybody benefits from a clean air and stable climate. Individually profitable to pollute, but if each of us are polluting, then everybody is doomed. See, basically this tragedy of the common explains why shared resources get destroyed even when everyone knows it's happening. Why global warming is still there, why there's pollution, why there's deforestation, when everybody knows that there is something wrong that you're doing. This is why. See, it's an incentive structure. Fixing it requires either regulation or privatization. Regulation is like forcing everybody to limit use, which removes individual choice but protects the collective resource. Either you do regulation or you do privatization. That is, give individual ownership, meaning they have incentive to maintain because they capture the benefits. And community reinforcements can be done, like small groups can monitor and punish overuse through social pressure or something like that. See, understanding all of this helps you understand where you are in this world, which is all a game. I don't know what else to talk about more than this. This is all I have important to talk. I would make a part 2 about this and talk about luxury branding and legacy in branding. Because already it's 23 minutes. I don't know if you guys have listened to me yap so long. If you find something wrong in what I said, please feel free to reach out, because it's a new topic to me as well, and I've done a lot of direct lifting from Substack articles. If you want to read the article first hand, give me a text, DM, I will send it to you. Thank you so much for listening.